Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into King Solomon. You know, the legendary King Solomon, who's known for wisdom,
right?
But maybe even more so for his mastery of magic.
Absolutely.
We got a ton of YouTube sources about him, from ancient texts to like modern interpretations, and I'm really excited to go through all of this with you.
Yeah.
So we're going to explore how his magical powers came about, that ring that everyone's always talking about, and just the lasting impact that his story has had on religion and magic and the occult.
It's pretty fascinating. I mean, his story really does bring together history and faith and magic in this really unique way.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking at, how all of that has changed over time across different cultures and how people have viewed him and the practices associated with him.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we're talking about a king whose reputation for magic goes back way before Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, we see it with people like Philo of Alexandria and Josephus, and even in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That's right.
They all talk about Solomon's power over demons.
Yeah, it wasn't just some local legend.
Right?
His rep went all the way to Arabia, and it's even mentioned in the Quran.
Wow.
But there's one story that really made Solomon the magician, and that's the Testament of Solomon.
Okay.
This ancient text shows Solomon binding demons and then making them build the Jerusalem temple.
I mean,
it's pretty amazing.
It's like next level power.
Right.
It's not just like, oh, I can do magic. It's I can make these supernatural beings do my bidding.
Exactly.
One of the YouTube channels you send, Esoterica.
Yes.
They point out that the Testament of Solomon basically became like the template for all the magic manuals and grimoires that came after. Like, it wasn't a spell book itself, but it was the inspiration for centuries of magic.
That's exactly right. The Testament of Solomon, it's like the foundation for the whole concept of demonology that we see in later magical systems.
Right.
You know, it set the rules for how to engage with these powerful beings and maybe even control them.
So we have Solomon, the demon-commanding architect.
Yes.
But where do we find the actual instructions for his magic? Like, where's the spell book?
Well, that's where the hygromancy of Solomon comes in.
Hygromancy.
Yes.
Okay, I gotta admit, that sounds more like a spa treatment than some ancient magical practice.
Yeah, the name itself is a bit of a puzzle.
Okay.
You see, it means divination by water.
Uh-huh.
But the text we have doesn't actually talk about any water divination techniques.
Huh. So maybe there's a missing part of the text?
Could be.
Or maybe there's like a symbolic meaning that we're missing?
Yeah, the mystery definitely adds to the intrigue.
For sure.
What we do know is that the hygromancy, it survives in these different manuscripts going back to the 15th century.
Okay.
So it's older than the Key of Solomon,
Wow.
which is, the more famous Solomonic text.
Right, right.
So it gives us a really interesting look at how Solomonic magic developed early on.
So what does this ancient manual actually tell us? What secrets does it hold?
Well, the hygromancy is divided into two parts.
Okay.
We have the macro form, and this lays out the core system, of planetary hours and the conjurations you need to summon angels and demons.
Okay, so it's like the base system.
Right.
Like an operating system?
Yes, exactly.
Then there's something else.
Then you have the macroforms. And these were added later. They have specific spells and instructions for how to make ritual objects.
So it's like an operating system with add-ons.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And the Esoterica channel, they talked about how the hygromancy even goes into detail about the days of the week.
Oh, wow.
Assigning each hour to a planet and giving specific actions for each hour.
So it's like a cosmic day planner.
Yeah, right.
Sign me up.
It shows just how detailed and structured Solomonic magic was.
Wow.
It even tells you the best times for conversations, legal stuff, and even taking wrath on one's adversaries.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Solomon really was the ultimate life hacker.
Sounds like it.
But I gotta say, the thing that I'm finding most fascinating is how this hygromancy foreshadows the more complex Solomonic magic that came later.
Oh, absolutely. The use of planetary hours, summoning, creating talismans using the hidden powers of plants.
Yeah.
All these elements are there in the hygromancy, and they're developed even further in the later texts.
Wow.
It's really amazing to see how these ideas started and how they evolved.
Yeah.
We even see connections between the hygromancy and the Greek magical papyri, but the hygromancy is much more systematic.
Okay, so it's like the hygromancy is the prototype.
Yes.
And all the later Solomonic magic grew from that.
Exactly.
I'm really curious about those microforms. You mentioned those later additions. What can you tell us about them?
Oh, those are where things get really interesting. They're like a treasure trove of spells and rituals. They give us a window into what people were really concerned about and what they desired.
So are we talking love spells treasure, hunts, invisibility potions?
Oh, you're in the right ballpark there. You got your love spells, your wealth spells, protection spells, even invisibility.
Wow.
Instructions on how to talk to the dead necromancy.
Spooky.
And of course, who could forget the treasure hunting spells?
Of course, got to find that gold.
Exactly.
It really does sound like they had a spell for everything back then, like a magical solution for every human desire.
Yeah, they really did.
But you know what I find really interesting about these additions to the hygromancy? It shows us that Solomonic magic wasn't this fixed, unchanging system. It was always being adapted.
Oh, absolutely.
And expanded upon.
The hygromancy wasn't just a book. It was like this living, breathing tradition.
Right.
It changed as the people who used it changed.
Exactly.
And all the different editions, they show us what people were worried about back then, but they also show us how other magical traditions were being blended into Solomonic magic.
It's like a fusion of magical practices.
Exactly.
Speaking of blending traditions.
Yeah.
We can't talk about Solomonic magic without talking about the ring.
Ah, yes, the Ring of Solomon.
A symbol that has captured the imagination for centuries.
Even Josephus, the Roman Jewish historian, you know him?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote about a guy using a Solomonic ring to exorcise a demon right in front of the Roman Emperor Vespasian.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a powerful testimonial.
Right. I mean, that story really shows us how ingrained the ring already was in magic, even way back then.
Oh, for sure.
It wasn't just some folktale people in the highest levels of society believed it had real power.
Yeah.
But there's this one detail that the esoteric channel brought up, and I found it really interesting.
What's that?
The earliest descriptions of Solomon's ring describe it as being made out of wax and parchment, not metal.
Interesting.
So not the image that we usually have in mind.
Right, the heavy silver ring with all the symbols and stuff.
Exactly.
In later.
Even the symbols themselves, they changed over time.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the early seals and manuscripts, like that one in Harley 5596,
right,
they're totally different from the pentagrams and hexagrams that we associate with the ring today.
It's like the image of the ring and the symbols of its power transformed over time.
It really shows how fluid and adaptable magic is.
Absolutely.
Always evolving.
And speaking of different interpretations,
Mm-hmm.
The Quran has its own take on Solomon's story and his magic.
Right, because the Quran acknowledges Solomon's power over the jinn,
Right.
but it makes it clear that his power was a gift from God, not sorcery.
It's a very important distinction.
Yeah, because the Quran actually warns against magic and sorcery.
Right.
It says that believing in those practices means you don't believe in God.
That's a pretty serious statement.
There's this really interesting story from the Inspired by Islam YouTube channel about how the Prophet Muhammad himself was affected by black magic.
Oh, wow.
But he was cured by reciting specific verses from the Quran.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah, it really highlights the complex relationship between Solomon's power and how Islam views magic.
It shows that while the Quran acknowledges these supernatural forces, it also says you shouldn't seek power outside of God's will.
Right, and that brings us to this question of morality, of whether the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
The Wise Bible Stories channel told the story of Solomon using his ring with the pentagram on it
Right.
to control demons and force them to build the temple.
It's a powerful image.
It's like, is it okay to use these potentially dangerous forces, even demonic ones, for a good cause?
That's a question that people have been asking for theories.
It really makes you question Solomon's wisdom.
It does. It adds another layer to his story.
Because is he really a wise and righteous ruler, or did he cross a line in his pursuit of power?
It's that ambiguity that makes his story so captivating.
It definitely makes me think. And that duality, that tension between wisdom and the misuse of power.
Yeah.
It's a theme that we see throughout history.
It
And it's directly tied to our fascination with Solomon's ring.
Oh, yeah. Even today, you have YouTube channels like Religious Story TV.
I saw that one.
They speculate about where the ring is and what you could do with it, world domination.
Like a global treasure hunt with the highest possible stakes.
Exactly.
It's amazing how the ring, whether it actually existed or not, still has such a hold on our imagination.
It speaks to something deep within us, our desire for power and control.
Right.
The ring becomes this symbol of that desire, our longing to shape our own destiny.
And to overcome our limitations.
Exactly.
But it's not just about raw power.
Right.
The Seal of Solomon Explained video pointed out that the hexagram, which is so connected to Solomon's ring,
yes,
it also appears in Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism.
That's right. And in those traditions, it represents the balance between masculine and feminine energies.
Wow.
It's a very different interpretation from the Western view of controlling demons and wielding supernatural power.
Right. So we look at the hexagram and we see Solomon's ring, but someone else might see a symbol of cosmic balance and harmony.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that symbols can mean different things to different people and different cultures.
It really makes you think about the hexagram itself, the Seal of Solomon.
Yes.
What mysteries does it hold? And what can it tell us about magic and power and our search for meaning? It really is amazing how one symbol, like the hexagram, can have so many different meanings. In the West, it's all about Solomon's power to trap those demons.
Right.
But in the East, it's about cosmic harmony and balance.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that Seal of Solomon Explained video. Remember how they pointed out that if you connect the points of the hexagram, you get a hexagon?
Right.
And then if you draw lines connecting the midpoints of the hexagon sides, you get a cube.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's a fascinating connection when you think about how important the cube is in other traditions, too.
Right. And it made me think about the black cube in Mecca.
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting connection.
Right.
The hexagram and the cube.
Yeah.
It kind of suggests a link between Solomon's seal and this central symbol in Islam.
Not exactly.
It's like all these traditions are connected in ways we might not even realize.
And it makes you wonder about all the other symbols out there, the ones we see every day.
Right.
Do they have deeper meanings that we're just not seeing?
It really makes you think.
And, that same video also talked about how the hexagram could be like a doorway.
Doorway.
Yeah, between the physical and spiritual realm.
Oh, wow. That's an idea that's been around for a long time.
Right. It's like the hexagram is a bridge to this unseen world.
The realm of angels and demons and all sorts of spiritual beings.
Exactly. And it goes back to that idea of Solomon using the seal to control those beings.
Right. It's like a key in a cage, all in one.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, we could be using this symbol to interact with forces beyond our understanding.
It raises all sorts of questions about what's really out there and what we're capable of.
For sure. So we've got the hexagrams,
Yeah.
6.6 sides.
Makes you think about the number 6 itself.
Right. And in numerology, 6 is all about balance and harmony.
Right.
But we've been talking about the hexagram as this symbol of control, of binding and commanding.
That's true. It's interesting because it makes me wonder if true control actually comes from balance.
Right, not just dominance.
Exactly. And it ties back to the hexagram representing the union of opposites, masculine and feminine energies. Maybe true power is about finding that harmony between those forces.
Not letting one overpower the other.
Exactly.
And I remember that video talking about how the shape of the hexagram is similar to the hexagonal shape on the planet Saturn.
Oh, that's right. And in alchemy, Saturn represents the prima materia.
Right, the primordial substance, the starting point of creation.
It's like the hexagram becomes a symbol of creation itself with all its potential for good and bad order and chaos.
Wow, that's deep. It's like a reminder that power can be used for so many things.
Absolutely.
To create or destroy, to heal or to harm.
And that brings us back to that question of whether the ends justify the means.
Right. Is it ever okay to use harmful methods even if you think you're doing good?
It's a question we all have to face in our own lives.
And it brings us back to that mystery of Solomon's ring.
Right. Did it actually exist or was it just a story?
That religious story TV channel had that crazy story about the genie tricking Solomon's wife into giving up the ring.
Oh, yeah, and then Solomon finds it inside a fish.
It's a wild story, but it shows you how much power people believed that ring had.
Even if it was just a legend.
Right, because stories can be powerful too.
They really can. They speak to our deepest desires, our desire for power and control to shape our destiny.
To be the masters of our own fate.
Exactly, and to overcome anything that stands in our way.
And it makes you wonder if maybe those stories were inspired by real objects.
Maybe things with strange properties that people couldn't explain.
Like in that mysterious Middle East video, they talked about that raid by the Turkish authorities.
Oh, yeah, where they thought they found Solomon's ring.
And it turned out to be a fake.
A medieval copy.
But the fact that people were still looking for it all those years later is pretty telling.
It shows that we've always been fascinated by the idea of power and knowledge.
By the things that could give us control over our lives.
Exactly. And Solomon's ring, whether it was real or not, it's a powerful symbol of that desire.
It represents our ambition, our curiosity, and our fascination with the unknown.
Absolutely. And, thinking about Solomon's story and all the symbols that go with it, it's like they're holding up a mirror to us.
Yeah.
Showing us our own own hopes and fears about power and knowledge and the choices we make.
It's not just about some ancient king, it's about us.
Exactly. Solomon's legacy, it goes beyond time and culture.
Right? It makes us think about the big questions.
What is power really?
What are the limits of what we can know?
And what does it truly mean to be wise?
This deep dive into King Solomon has been quite a journey.
It really has.
We've explored ancient texts, we've talked about the meaning of the hexagram and the ring. We've even uncovered connections between Solomon's story and other esoteric traditions like Kabbalah and alchemy.
It's amazing how much there is to uncover.
I know, it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
We have, but I think the most important thing we've learned is that the pursuit of knowledge and power,
Yeah.
it has to be guided by wisdom and compassion.
And a deep understanding of the forces we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Time flies when you're exploring ancient mysteries.
It really does, but remember, the exploration doesn't have to end here.
That's right.
Keep researching, keep asking questions, keep digging deeper into Solomon's world. You never know what you might find.
And who knows, maybe you'll even uncover the secret of the ring.
Maybe. Until next time, keep diving.